Live from KSAT 12, the news at noon starts right now.
Well, thousands of people on the southwest side of town were left in the dark this morning because of a car accident. Well, a rollover that slammed into a power line and sent two people to the hospital. So our Devin Karp is live on the scene. And Devin, we understand the police say that alcohol may have been a factor in the early morning crash.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. If you take a look behind me here, you can see crews are still hard at work, and the signs from this morning's crash are still there. All the trash thrown across the grass right here as they work to put in a new power line after the old one was hit through by that car. Now, you can still see that the crews right here are working to fix the remaining power outage. But if you think this is a lot right now, it was nothing compared to what we saw this morning. Police tell us that around 6 a.m. this car was going southbound on Old Pearsall when it swerved over onto the other side of the road into the grass, toppling over with 3 people inside. SAPD says of those 3 people, 2 were ejected from the car and taken into the hospital. 1 in serious and the other in critical condition. The 3rd person bolted away from first responders and fled on foot. SAPD says alcohol might be involved, but it's too early to tell if that open and empty containers in the car were alcoholic. Investigators haven't said whether or not there's going to be any charges filed. Now, as far as the power line that went down, originally that left about 2,000 customers without power, according to CPS. Now they've told us that number is down to 2. Crews are going to be here working for the rest of the afternoon until they're able to get this new power line installed. There's still no word yet on the condition of the 2 people who were taken to the hospital. For now, I'm going to send it back to you, Devin Karp, KSAT 12 News.
All right, Devin, thank you for that live report. Looking outside with live cam this afternoon, 63 degrees. It looks colder than it actually is, Mia.
It is very cloudy out there. At least visibilities were starting to improve, especially here in San Antonio, followed by what was a very foggy morning. Take a look at visibility values right now. At least here in Bexar County, they have improved significantly. We still have slightly lower visibility, though, especially out east along I-10, even up I-35 and up into the hill country. But overall, these numbers a lot higher than where they were just a few hours ago. The dense fog advisory that was in place earlier this morning has been allowed to expire. But yes, plenty of cloud cover in store right now. That is very similar to the scene that we saw out there this time yesterday. Temperatures are in the low 60s here in San Antonio, 63 degrees over at SA International, just a degree warmer over in Seguin at 64. Portions of the hill country still checking in the chilly mid 50s right now, 54 in Bernie, 55 over in Kerrville. Mostly cloudy skies still expected into this afternoon. A high temperature right around 67 degrees in town. Winds will generally be out of the east at about 5 to 10 miles per hour. Looking ahead to the upcoming weekend, another round of patchy morning fog expected, especially tomorrow. High temperatures in the 70s, so it will be warmer than average, but that's going to change by early next week. A strong cold front arriving later in the day on Sunday. Colder Arctic air spilling in to south central Texas throughout the day on Monday. We are expecting some morning light freezes here in San Antonio next week, starting Tuesday. Afternoon still cold in the 30s and 40s. And yes, precipitation chances are in the forecast later next week. We'll get you a look at what those details look like as well coming up in just a few.
Thank you, Mia. Well, for the first time since the deadly terrorist attack on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, the famed tourist attraction is back open to pedestrians, but with heavy barricades in place. This as more details are emerging about the man behind the terrorist attack. Lee Waldman is in New Orleans with the latest.
Vehicle traffic allowed again on Bourbon Street after it was opened yesterday, but we can see a growing memorial here for those 14 victims killed in the early morning hours on New Year's Day, right next to temporary barricades put into place. Authorities now saying it's clear that the suspect, Shamsuddin Jabbar, was inspired by foreign terrorist ideology to carry out this attack. But now questions remain. How did the Army veteran become radicalized?
Video obtained exclusively by CNN shows Shamsuddin Jabbar shortly before the attack, working outside his truck in New Orleans. The FBI also releasing images of Jabbar and a cooler believed to contain an improvised explosive device.
The IED was inside a cooler, and many people stopped and looked at the cooler and then continued on their way.
Authorities are calling the deadly truck ramming attack premeditated, now saying definitively that Jabbar acted alone. They're asking anyone who might have seen him or knew him to come forward with any information.
Whether you know Jabbar personally, worked with him, served in the military, or saw him in New Orleans or Texas, we need to talk to you.
Meanwhile, more images and stories of the attack victims are starting to emerge. Kathy and Lou Tenedorio, whose son Matthew was killed, say he had the biggest heart. They also say they begged him not to go to New Orleans that night.
Please don't go. It's dangerous over there. It's not the way it used to be. There's a lot of crime. Please stay here. And he's like, don't worry about it, Dad. I love you. And we hugged and he left.
Temporary hardened barriers have been put into place to prevent vehicle traffic along Bourbon Street, but some believe this attack could change how all large crowd events will be handled moving forward.
Everything changed after 9/11. I think you're going to see everything change about large-scale events.
Just last month, the Department of Homeland Security warned law enforcement about the threat of lone offenders around the holiday and potential vehicle rammings. That's according to 2 internal memos obtained by CNN. The Justice Department charged alleged ISIS sympathizers here in the U.S. 3 times since last fall. In New Orleans, I'm Lee Waldman reporting.
All right, Lee, thank you. Well, a sad update report, 1-year-old Makaya Amrani has passed away. Now, Makaya was hurt in an accidental crash at the Excelled Montessori School near Bernie on December 19th. Since then, she fought for her life. The little girl spent her final days surrounded by her family in the hospital. Bexar County deputies say that crash happened after a woman had a medical episode while driving in the parking lot of that school. 22-year-old teacher Alexia Rosales was also killed in that crash, and there were other kids injured as well. A road rage episode believed to be responsible for sending one man to the hospital, and now officers are looking for the suspect who they say was driving a purple Mazda. This happened just before 7 last night on I-35 near Rittiman Road. That's where San Antonio police say the driver of one vehicle was having a hard time getting around another vehicle. Police say one driver started shooting at the other driver, hitting him twice in the legs before speeding off. The victim is expected to be okay. Well, now that the holidays are officially over, here's how to get rid of your old Christmas tree. You can recycle them with Texas Disposal Systems. So you can drop them off at the locations right there on your screen. So Texas Disposal Systems also accepting other organic decorations. It will recycle your stuff for free through January 31st. Well, getting the kiddos up and moving can be a challenge during the breaks, especially if they got some new high-tech toys. How having siblings can have a positive impact on children's physical activity. Well, winter weather is coming, and it might be the coldest that we've seen so far this season, and how one group is trying to prepare the people who are most vulnerable. Well, San Antonio's largest organization serving people without housing, trying to help a vulnerable population prepare for winter weather. As Garrett Behringer reports, Haven for Hope is looking to collect 3,000 pieces of warm weather clothing.
When the temperatures drop, the need rises. Haven for Hope is holding a cold weather clothing drive on the 11th, but cold temperatures are coming first.
Used clothes already flow into Haven for Hope's donation center.
I don't need it anymore. I've gotten too small or too large for my own clothes, and these people need it.
But with the coldest months of the year upon us,
like, this is a great heavy coat.
Haven for Hope is looking for winter clothes specifically.
We're serving 1,700 individuals right now. We go through the items very quickly.
Some of the people staying at Haven say it's hard to keep a coat in San Antonio when you live on the street.
I tried to carry it, but it just happened that people have taken my stuff.
You can't keep it with you forever, so you ditch it. When it comes back to hot, you get hot clothes. When it comes back to cold, you get cold clothes.
And the cold is coming now. Temperatures will dip near freezing next week ahead of the drive, in the coldest stretch so far this winter. Haven staff plan to give the coats they have now to people at their shelter. What they get from the drive will go to clients and to people on the street.
So we're urging people, while you're still home on break, maybe you're home from school and work, this is a great weekend to go through those closets and donate anything you're no longer using.
If you want to donate, items like coats, hats, gloves, pants, or long-sleeve shirts can all be previously used. Haven needs socks and undergarments too. but those should be new.
Last year's goal was 1,000 articles of clothing. Instead, they ended up getting about double that. So this year they're reaching a little further, hoping for 3,000 articles of cold weather clothing. Outside Haven for Hope, I'm Garrett Berger, KSAT 12 News.
And outside with live cam, things a lot milder now than what we will expect next week, Mia.
Yes, exactly. By Monday morning, I know a lot of the kiddos fixing to head back to school, they will want the heavy coat. Make sure that you send it out with them to the school bus stop just so you don't get caught off guard. In the meantime, the aquifer down 1/10 of a foot this Friday at 627. That's over 41 feet below the January average. When it comes to the pollen count, better news than what we saw yesterday. Mountain Cedar falls into the low category, joining molds. We'll have another full check at that forecast and talk about those temperature changes coming up.
We were talking about it earlier. It's not freezing outside, but just the fact that we didn't see a whole lot of sun makes it feel colder even now.
It makes a difference, yeah, when you're kind of locked in under the cloud cover. That's what we saw yesterday. I still needed my long sleeve into the afternoon because we really didn't see a whole lot of sun. And really, Steph, I think more of the same is expected today. High temperatures could be a little bit warmer, but then the temperature roller coaster continues. So upper 60s, right around 67 degrees. That's our forecast high this afternoon. Tomorrow, after some patchy morning fog, high temperatures near 70 are expected. We warm up even more so by Sunday afternoon. We could start off the day with a few clouds, but then drier air quickly punches in. Plenty of afternoon sunshine helping temperatures soar into the mid 70s. It's about 10 to 15 degrees above average. Then we see this strong cold front work in late in the day on Sunday. Colder Arctic air starts to spill into the state of Texas throughout the day on Monday. Notice your high temperature on Monday, near 50 degrees. So it is going to be noticeably colder and still breezy by Monday morning, which is why I mentioned earlier, you will want to plan on sending the heavy coat out with the kids to the school bus stop just so it doesn't catch you off guard. Then temperatures in the upper 30s and 40s are expected starting on Tuesday and lasting throughout the second half of next week. And yes, that's also the time frame that we will be monitoring for a few precipitation chances to return to the forecast as well. So let's go ahead and talk all about it. Again, taking a look at temperatures across the state, you can see the gradient here. The 63 here in San Antonio is one of the warmest temperatures on the map. You get up into the Central Plains in the teens in Omaha, mid 30s in Wichita, but yes, teens even across the northern tier as well. Take a look at temperatures in Canada right now, below zero by a pretty large margin in many locations. It's minus 29 in Hay River right now, minus 15 in Fort Nelson. Here's this Arctic air that's starting to work farther off to the south. Now, don't get me wrong, it is not going to be anything near that cold here in San Antonio, but watch what happens on your futurecast here over the next few days. So by Sunday morning, again, still expecting a warm weekend here in San Antonio, but a low pressure system is already starting to work across the Texas Panhandle. That will have a cold front attached to it. It moves through our neck of the woods by Sunday evening, opening the door for some of that colder air to then work into south central Texas. Cold air in place expected starting Monday, lasting through next week. But then we also monitor this low pressure system approaching from the west. The question here when it comes to precipitation chances for us here in San Antonio, how quickly does this low progress eastward? That is going to determine when we see any type of precipitation and what type of precipitation that falls as. Right now, guidance has been suggesting a lot of that will just be cold liquid rain, especially through the Wednesday and Friday time frame of next week, but we'll still need to keep keep tabs on the potential to find a little bit of wintry mix here and there. Still a little too far out, so we have some question marks and some questions to answer by later on this weekend and especially early next week. In the meantime, plan for a cold, breezy Monday, light freezes in the morning starting on Tuesday, and then yes, the potential for some damp, cold weather Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It is important to note this is not going to be anything like what we saw back in February 2021, and you can see with those high temperatures here in town, we are not expecting an extended period of cold with those temperatures below freezing. So that is good news. Of course, we'll have another update on that coming up in the next half hour, Steph.
Thank you, Mia. That is good news. Well, during the holidays, a lot of our little ones got new electronic devices like iPads or video games, and a new study is looking at how those devices could have health impacts for kids starting as early as 6 months old. Well, our Patty Santos tells us the study also looked at the positive impact of having siblings.
One observation we had in this study was that kids that had siblings in the home tended to be more physically active than kids who did not.
Researcher Russell Pate says kids between 6 months old to 3 years old were more likely to be more physically active when they had siblings around. This first of its kind study looked at how much exercise kids are getting as soon as they can crawl.
We do not have federal guidelines on physical activity for kids younger than age 3, and so there's a need to learn more about physical activity behavior in very young kids and the association between physical activity and health in kids that age.
The study found kids were very active when they were learning how to get around, but that plateaus as they get older. Their access to electronic devices played a role in their activity level.
Kids that are more physically active at an earlier age are likely to be more physically active at a later age. So, this behavior seems to be established quite early in life, and that's part of why we were interested in doing this study.
He says learning more about physical activity or lack thereof could help all of us grow up to be healthier as we age.
What's your message to parents?
You have a responsibility here, and you need to take it seriously. And my number one recommendation to parents is be physically active with your kids. And it doesn't need to be highly planned or structured. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. It can be going outside to play for a few minutes after dinner. It can be going for a walk in the neighborhood.
Patty Santos, KSAT 12 News.
Well, the study did find that kids who were more active were slower to gain weight than kids who were less active. He says it's going to be interesting to follow the development of the kiddos from the study as they get older. Well, San Antonio Lemonade Shop getting a boost to help them through tough times, how they're not looking for opportunities for expansion. Well, struggling to survive, that's a reality for many small businesses in San Antonio. But with a new year here, one lemonade shop is optimistic. And our Avery Everett shows us how a grant from the Human Rights Campaign is helping keep their doors open.
When you think of lemonade, you probably picture a stand. But the Lemon Girls have a more complicated process.
It's a taste of Puerto Rico and it's a taste of San Antonio.
One that's garnered enough support to open a storefront location on North Zarzamora.
We're really lucky.
With 2 years of open doors, this business has seen its share of ups and downs.
It's very cyclical.
But the lowest point came late last year.
All of a sudden, there was a shift in people, shift in tone. It was the gloomiest moment that I think we've had in this store. And then we had to ask for help.
A plea to customers and a push to apply for grants.
I'd actually been trying for about a year. At the time, I was actually feeling kind of discouraged about continuing to write more grants. She went on this applying streak, and then we didn't hear nothing, and then it just arrived, and we're like, thank you. Thank you, universe.
The business received a Queer to Stay grant through the Human Rights Campaign and its partners, giving $10,000 to the Lemon Girls in a time when they needed it the most.
We were able to kind of catch up on the ground that we were losing from before.
They hope a new year means new opportunities.
It's doing the ramen bar, getting more of the, Asian and Indian and Latino snacks that we wanted to bring in.
A small business saved, with sights now set on the future. Avery Everett, KSAT 12 News.
More than a dozen high-profile Bexar County cases expected to play out in 2025. Coming up in the next half hour, a look at some of those cases and what we can expect in the year ahead. Let's look out there with live cam. Happy Friday, everyone. I feel like we cheated this week because it wasn't like a full week for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And, it has been kind of an up and down week when it comes to the weather. Earlier this week, we had high temperatures in the 80s. Then we had a cool front move in just in time for the new year. Temperatures in the 60s were found over the past couple of days, and I still anticipate that being the case into this afternoon. Take a look at satellite and temperatures across the area right now. You can see that we are still very much dealing with the cloud cover here in San Antonio. At least the patchy fog that was hindering visibility on area roadways earlier this morning has improved. So we're at 63 degrees right now, but take a look at Rock Springs up into the southern Edwards Plateau where there's already plenty of sunshine. Temperatures are in the upper 60s for you out there in Edwards County. At 64 in Beeville, 63 out east of Gonzales, 63 as well in Pleasanton, and 50s for places like Kerrville, Hondo, as well as Uvalde. Like yesterday, I do think we will see plenty of cloud cover into this afternoon. Perhaps a few peaks of sunshine, but more clouds than sun. Upper 60s, right around 67 degrees, our forecast high. Then you'll still want the light jacket if you're stepping out for any Friday night plans, with temperatures slow to fall into and through the low 60s. Looking ahead to the weekend, still warm when it comes to those afternoon highs, warmer than today. Near 70 tomorrow, mid 70s on Sunday. It will be windy as well in the afternoon hours. Then we see that next cold front move through and colder air starts to filter in. A big difference Monday compared to what we're expecting for the second half of the weekend. We'll have more on what's on the other side of that cold front into next week coming up a little bit later on.
Thank you, Mia. Well, 2025 is shaping up to be a very busy year at the courthouse. More than a dozen high-profile cases we'll be tracking, and some of these cases you may have forgotten about. So our Erica Hernandez gives us a closer look at which cases are expected to go to trial this year.
From newer cases to some that began years ago, we are expecting a lot of them to play out in 2025. The cases of former SAPD officers will be front and centered this year. James Brennan, who shot Eric Cantu outside a McDonald's parking lot in 2022, is expected to go to trial this spring. And the 3 officers who killed a woman having a mental health crisis will find out this month when they can expect their trial date to be this year. Alfred Flores and Elizar Alejandro are both charged with murder, while Nathaniel Villalobos is charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Bexar County will see a death penalty case this year. Stephen Clare is charged with capital murder and is accused of the 2023 attack of his ex-wife and 2 young daughters. The youngest, at 11 months old, didn't survive the attack. While no actual date is set yet, it is expected at the end of the summer or early fall. As far as older cases, Reyes Gallegos, accused in the murder of his wife who disappeared in 2019, will be going to trial. Gallegos was arrested and charged with murder in 2021, despite Cecilia Huertas Gallegos never being found. A pre-trial hearing is scheduled for Gallegos in February, and he should shortly after that be heading to trial. Another older case is the capital murder case of Tamor McIntyre. McIntyre, who has already been convicted of murder in another county, is facing a capital murder charge for the robbery and fatal shooting of Mark Anthony Saldivar at a Northside Chick-fil-A in 2017. McIntyre's trial is set to begin February 10th.
We will also continue to closely follow the Brad Simpson case, but again, we are just scratching the surface on the amount of cases that are expected this year. For a look at more cases we're following in 2025, just head to our website, KSAT.com. Erica Hernandez, KSAT 12 News.
Well, 8 public safety officers are getting the Medal of Valor Award. 5 of the recipients responded to that deadly 2023 Covenant school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, according to the White House, President Biden is recognizing Sergeant Jeffrey Mathis, Officer Rex Engelbert, and detectives Michael Goyasso, Ryan Cagle, and Zachary Plessy. They all helped subdue a former student who authorities say targeted victims randomly and killed 6 people. The Medal of Valor is the nation's highest award for valor by a public safety officer. The other recipients include a Nebraska police officer who saved a drowning woman in 2023 and 2 New York City firefighters. Boeing says it has made strides in improving passenger safety. The company set a goal last year to turn around quality following several incidents, including 2 737 MAX jet crashes that killed everybody on board and a door plug blowout mid-flight. Now, Boeing says it had addressed most of the action items brought up by employees. The company says it has also invested in more product safety and quality training for all of its employees and is now requiring mechanics and quality inspectors to stamp their names on completed work. A federal appeals court killed net neutrality yesterday. It is the end of a fight that has spanned nearly 2 decades now. So net neutrality is a term that forbids internet providers from giving preferential bandwidth to certain providers. Without it, broadband internet providers can purposely slow down content they may view as competition, like video streaming. Conversely, they can also charge companies a fee in exchange for more bandwidth. The Federal Communications Commission has been fighting to regulate broadband providers as utilities so it could protect net neutrality. But a 3-judge panel on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 6th Circuit in Cincinnati ruled that the FCC does not have such authority. An exciting day at SeaWorld for several members of the Boys and Girls Club. They explored the park and learned what it takes to be a marine biologist. Plus, they made a new friend. Hollywood rolling out the red carpet for the kickoff to the award show season. The stars hoping to take home a Golden Globe. Still ahead. And we know raw milk can pose a bird flu threat to humans. However, what you feed your pet could put them at risk as well. What to avoid after the break. Well, a new warning from the Surgeon General about alcohol. So Dr. Vivek Murthy issued a new advisory Friday warning Americans that alcohol consumption can increase cancer risk. He called for an updated health warning label on alcoholic beverages, a move that would require approval from Congress. Murthy says alcohol has attributed to 20,000 cancer deaths in the U.S. every year, which is higher than the 13,500 alcohol-associated traffic crash fatalities per year in the U.S. The Surgeon General's new advisory also calls for guidelines, limits for alcohol consumption to be assessed to account for cancer risk. Now, the thought has been if you work on a dairy farm, drink raw milk, or even feed your pets raw meat, you should be paying attention to cases of bird flu. But what about the rest of us? Well, Zaria Oates spoke with a doctor about who's at risk of being infected and how to avoid that virus.
Staying away from raw milk could be your best bet at dodging avian influenza, also known as bird flu. Bird flu is spread from wild birds to outdoor farm animals like cows and chickens, and consuming those byproducts raw, like raw milk, can have consequences. University Health's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Brian Alsip, says though bird flu has been around for a while, the dangers are still prevalent.
And since it's unpasteurized, that also is a potential risk for people who could drink milk from an infected dairy cow.
And if you're not sure if you're drinking raw milk or any other kind of milk, you can check on the back of it or somewhere on the label. It should say pasteurized somewhere if it is pasteurized milk. And if it's raw milk, it's probably going to be on the front of that container.
So right now what we're seeing is infections from animals to people, and perhaps in a very close quarter contact environment, person to person. But what we're not seeing is person to person to person to person spread. And that's really the bigger concern for a larger epidemic or certainly a future pandemic.
According to the CDC, Texas only had 1 exposure to bird flu in 2024, a big difference from California, which had 37 exposures. While it's vital to keep yourself safe and away from potentially contaminated products, keeping your pets away from these items can be just as important.
Cats are currently more susceptible than dogs to avian influenza. And so if you feed your cat raw pet food that's been untreated, then that could also put them at risk. And we've seen a few cases of fatalities in cats.
If you think you might be infected with bird flu, the good news is these symptoms don't differ much from your typical flu symptoms: fever, cough, stuffy nose, nausea, and fatigue. And there are treatments for the virus.
There's, readily available medications that your doctor can prescribe for seasonal influenza that presumably should still work just as well on avian influenza or bird flu.
Zaria Oates, KSAT 12 News.
Let's look out there with live cam. 63 degrees, not bad. So I'm looking at Mia's graphic. 63, a lot better than what the people were dealing with in 1911. Oh my goodness.
Hey, so true. Check this out. So our record low temperature for the day is 16. Yes, back in 1911. We were nowhere near that earlier this morning. It was cool, and yes, we did have some patchy fog and a little bit of drizzle in spots, but it actually was above average with an official low of 52. We're going to shoot for a forecast high right around 67. Overall, pretty seasonable for this time of year and well below the record high of 86 that was set back in the early 1970s. Our temperature roller coaster continues. Another check at that coming up.
Well, several members of the Boys and Girls Club were able to take a special trip to SeaWorld, and they explored the park and even got up close and personal with the beluga whales, where our photojournalist Adam Barraza shows us their encounter.
We're going to take you first off. Once the kids get off the bus, we're going to go in. We're going to hang out with the beluga whales a little bit.
Take one and then pass them to your neighbor.
We're really going to enjoy. They were so excited. I heard as they were getting on the bus, they were just like, ready to go. And all morning they've been asking and asking.
Beluga whale, it's a unique animal that people don't get a chance to see very often, being that they're found around the Arctic Circle. So we thought it'd be really great for the kids of the Boys and Girls Club of San Antonio to come out and meet an animal that most people don't get a chance to see up close. Let's get them in the park.
Let's go.
All right, let's do it.
It's very important, not only because of the partnership, but the young minds that don't get to come out to like SeaWorld.
It's like a community that I join in the summers.
For a lot of these kids, this is their first experience at SeaWorld. So they've been so excited to be out here and be a part of this field trip. Majority of our clubhouses are in lower income communities. So these kids, again, this might be their first opportunity to come out to a place like SeaWorld and then see what there is to offer. Also gives them the opportunity to see what they can become as well. These opportunities in front of them.
It felt like a water balloon, but like squishy and like slimy. It felt weird.
We all have relationships with them, so they know who we are.
The world gives back to the community, how they can learn, and maybe again one day they may want to become a marine biologist.
I was interested in doing it. I just like feeling what animals feel like.
Once they're done here, they do get to go back to the center that they're from, and they have a little quiz on what they learned and what they found out about the belugas that they might not have known.
They're kids and they get to have fun, and this is like a lifetime opportunity to do this.
How cute. We're all looking at the beluga whale like, oh.
And all the little kids with their little beanies on too.
So cute.
What a great experience.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you to Adam Barraza for bringing us that story. And it's a good thing they were out there when temperatures weren't so harsh.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It was somewhat mild out there. Yes, a little cool. And that's going to be the case again, especially for those that stick with the cloud cover this afternoon. This, of course, follows what was a foggy start to this Friday. Take a look at this photo sent in to KSAT Connect from our friend Skywatcher. The caption there, how bad is the fog in my neck of the woods? From where I'm standing, it's about 200 feet to the stoplight. I can't see much else beyond it. It's kind of pretty though with the holiday lights around the trees. Like they're kind of glowing a little bit. Yes, illuminates some of that fog. Again, visibilities have improved greatly this lunchtime hour, and they will continue to do so into this afternoon. But the reason why we saw a bit more fog out there this morning is because we've started to see a touch more moisture moisture work back in as well. The way that we measure that moisture is by looking at dew points. They're in the mid to upper 50s right now here in San Antonio and much of south central Texas. For context, that's about 10 to 15 degrees higher than where they were this time yesterday. So with some of that moisture still in place, especially tomorrow morning, I do anticipate another round of patchy morning fog and perhaps a little bit of drizzle for any early Saturday morning plans. So just something to think about if you are planning on hitting the roadways first thing tomorrow. We will start off our Sunday with some moisture. Then we see drier air punch in by the afternoon. That next cold front working in later in the day on Sunday, and then drier air will really be the theme as we head into next week. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Again, right now you can see across the state of Texas, nothing out there when it comes to notable and significant rain. That is a different story, though, up to our northwest. Across the Pacific Northwest, this low pressure system approaching is sparking some rain and even some wintry weather where temperatures are cold enough across Washington state, even Oregon, some of that stretching into Northern California. That low pressure system is what's going to be tracking eastward here over the next couple of days. It moves across the central U.S. by Sunday. Later in the day, in the evening hours, is when we see that cold front attached to it sweep through the San Antonio area. That's going to open the door for some of that colder Arctic air that we've been talking about to filter in throughout the day on Monday, and then morning light freezes are expected starting on Tuesday. Then here comes the wild card and what we still need to keep tabs on and really fine tune here over the next several days. Another low pressure system digging even farther off to our south, to the west here. That's going to help filter in some additional energy and moisture as it approaches the state of Texas by the second half of next week, especially Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The question being, exactly when does that happen and what are our temperatures here in south central Texas? Do they line up together to maybe give us a little bit of wintry weather, or is it just cold liquid rain? As of right now, temperatures look to be just warm enough for many locations for this 40% chance Thursday and Friday to mostly be liquid rain. But again, we're still far out, so we need to keep tabs on that very closely. The margin is very, very small, so check back in with us as we fine-tune those details into early next week to see if we can't find a little bit of wintry mix in with some of that by Thursday and into Friday. In the meantime, warmer this weekend, high temperatures in the 70s, then much colder as we look ahead to our Monday.
We'll be watching closely. Thank you, Mia. Well, award season kicking off, and it could be a wicked good time this weekend at Sunday's Golden Globes. Who's vying to take home the gold after the break?
Special report.
Good afternoon, I'm Mary Bruce in New York. We're coming on the air because the 119th Congress is conducting its first order of business. Just minutes, though, into the new session, the House trying to accomplish its first goal, electing a speaker. But already we are seeing the deep divisions within the Republican Party on full display. Mike Johnson just failing on the first round of voting to hold on to the gavel. The party has a razor-thin majority in the House. Johnson could only afford to lose the support of just one Republican. He has lost 3. This, of course, comes despite President-elect Donald Trump's vocal support and endorsement of Speaker Johnson. Now, heading into today's vote, Johnson had been sounding confident, hoping to avoid the marathon vote that plagued his predecessor, former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. It took him 15 rounds to secure the Speaker's gavel, a process that dragged out over 4 days. And now Johnson, it appears, is heading for a second round. The stakes here are high. Without a speaker, the business of Congress comes to a screeching halt, unable to even certify Donald Trump's victory, a vote that is supposed to happen on Monday and something the president-elect is no doubt keenly aware of. I want to get straight to ABC's Jay O'Brien on Capitol Hill. And Jay, heading in to this first round of voting, you caught up with the speaker and he actually was downplaying any loss on this first round. Let's take a listen.
I think we'll have all the votes today. So.
What does it say if you lose on the first ballot, Mr. Speaker?
It says nothing. It's part of the process, but I expect that we'll get it done.
Are you concerned that you will?
The speaker there telling you this is part of the process, insisting this is basically democracy in action. But Jay, there is no doubt now that these members on the far right are intent on sending the speaker a message.
That's exactly right, Mary. And this is exactly what Mike Johnson did not want to happen, what he said he hoped would not happen. He thought he had this on the first ballot. He and his team were projecting confidence after days and weeks of discussions with those 17 or so Republican holdout votes. And even at the end of all of that, Mike Johnson getting 3 no votes. We always knew that one of those no votes, Congressman Thomas Massie, was always going to vote against Mike Johnson, but it was up in the air as to what everyone else would do. 2 others joining Massie, though, Ralph Norman of South Carolina and Keith Self, both of them voting for someone other than Mike Johnson, which puts Mike Johnson in a position where he's got those 3 no votes at this hour. Mike Johnson was able to flip at least 15 of those undecided votes who had publicly not come out and said whether they would support him one way or the other. He did that in part by announcing a slate of policy positions before the vote. He said he wanted to tackle government spending. He said he wanted to reduce the size of government, even go after what he says was the weaponization of government and work with the Department of Government Efficiency, that DOGE effort. But it wasn't enough to get all the votes in the column that he needed, Mary.
And Jay, Republicans will now presumably be huddling, coming up with a path forward. I want to take that question to ABC contributing correspondent Rachel Bade, Politico Capitol Bureau Chief and senior Washington columnist. And Rachel, not only are Republicans trying to figure out what comes next, but also Donald Trump. This was a big test for him as well. We know he came out and endorsed Speaker Johnson, was even working the phones on his behalf. You've been in touch with the Trump team. What are you hearing?
Yeah, look, Mary, obviously they're disappointed, Donald Trump and Speaker Johnson and his allies, that he didn't get there on the first round. However, I am hearing confidence that they think they're going to get there today at some point. There's sort of this belief that Speaker Johnson is the only one who can do it. That's what one Trump insider told me last night. The thinking that, you know, in terms of moving forward with an agenda, he's the only one who can get the number of votes to actually get the gavel. So look, Donald Trump, he has a lot of political capital on the line. He doesn't want to look like he's losing sway with his party. And because of that, he's actually going to be working the phones to make sure Johnson can actually get the votes. But it's more than a political issue, Mary. It's also a practical one when it comes to his legislative agenda. He wants to be certified. He wants the Electoral College to certify him on the 6th. That cannot happen in a couple of days if there's no speaker. He cannot be sort of sworn in to be president again unless there's a speaker. And realistically, Republicans cannot begin working on their agenda and passing bills like this big border bill that Donald Trump wants them to move within a month of him taking the oath of office. They can't do that if they're fighting. So there is this belief behind the scenes right now that they're going to get there, that these conservatives wanted to sort of make a point and show that they're willing to stand up to the speaker and to the president. But frankly, 3 is a pretty small number, and they think they can pick off those holdouts and get Johnson the gavel once again, Mary.
So the Trump team expressing confidence, but they do practically have to get at least 2 of these Republicans to get on board with Speaker Johnson. Let's bring that question to ABC's chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl, because, John, Speaker Johnson all along has made it clear that he is not going to be making any backroom deals. We saw that backfire with Kevin McCarthy 2 years ago. So how is he going to get these 2 Republicans, Ralph Norman of South Carolina and Keith Self of Texas, to fall in line?
2 words, Mary: Donald Trump. This is all about Donald Trump. And look, it is a setback, at least in the moment, for Trump and for Johnson, perhaps even an embarrassing setback. Donald Trump was directly involved, far more directly involved than he was at the start of the Kevin McCarthy battle in supporting Johnson. Trump's message to the Republican holdouts is don't mess with my inauguration. Don't mess with my agenda. Mike Johnson is the guy, the only person that realistically has a chance to be elected speaker. We need to get through this for the very reason you just heard Rachel Bade mention, which is Congress can't do anything else until the Speaker of the House is elected. No work on a Trump agenda. No certification of Trump's election victory, which is supposed to happen on Monday, January 6th. So, look, Donald Trump was directly involved. He clearly had a big impact on this vote. As Jay mentioned, we had a list on our list of 17 known holdouts who were unwilling to commit to Mike Johnson. In the end, all but 3 of them got in line, again, for one reason: Donald Trump. Now the question is, how do they turn the screws in to get at least 2 of the 3 remaining holdouts to get in line? I suspect they will.
And as you note, the pressure is on given the incoming administration's ambitious agenda. Let's go back to Jay O'Brien because, Jay, we're watching these images, some Republicans there on the floor huddling, presumably trying to figure out where this goes next. What's the latest you're hearing? How is this going to play out this afternoon?
Well, right now, they haven't closed out this vote yet, Mary. When they close out the vote, the results become official. So they could leave this vote open and hope that those 2 Republican holdout votes that Mike Johnson would need to flip to become the Speaker of the House would ultimately change their minds. They could still do that in the procedures of the House, or they could announce a second ballot. Unclear exactly where they're going to go. Also, when John talks about turning the screws to some of these holdout votes, we just saw Mike Johnson walk off the floor with one of those no votes at this hour. Keith Self. They just walked into a room off of the floor, presumably to try to flip Keith Self's vote from no on Johnson, Self voted for someone else, to yes. And you see there some of the images we've seen of Mike Johnson wheeling and dealing on the floor at this hour, trying to flip some of these votes. Now, Mike Johnson has made it clear to me. He says he is not going to bargain for this job. He's not going to make concessions for this job, the kind that Kevin McCarthy had to make 2 years ago in order to become the Speaker of the House. And many of those concessions, of course, ultimately became McCarthy's undoing when he was ousted after just 9 months on the job. Mike Johnson has said he's not going to